Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the second episode of the story in which Naruto is adopted at a young age. How far can he go if someone actually supports him? How will he influence the elemental nations? This story is from a writing bunny. Please support him, her. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. The fugitive was stealthily crawling through the underbrush. It had been a long time since he last spotted his pursuers, but he didn't dare to lower his guard one bit. They were both skilled and persistent, they've proven it enough already. One mistake and he would be captured again. And then, just thinking about it gave him the creeps. A twig snapped. That was nearby. Was it them? He carefully looked around, remaining hidden. Nothing. Even his sensitive ears couldn't pick a sound of pursuit. Yet he didn't allow himself to think he was safe. He resumed his travel. An oppressive scent suddenly hit his nose. A dog? That was bad. He darted from his hiding place just in time to avoid the snapping jaws. And ran straight into the arms of another hunter. Forest of Konoha, got high. Mwah. Naruto screamed. Sharp teeth bit into his hand and he barely avoided a claw swipe that would have taken out his eye. "Stop it, you beast," he shouted, but the cat just scratched harder. He held it at arm's length, but unfortunately it wasn't far enough for him. He still got 4 bloody scratches on his face to accompany his birthmarks. He squeezed the animal in anger. It hissed and dug its claws into his forearm. He reflexively dropped it. Before it could escape again, Hataru appeared and swiped it of the ground. "What were you doing to the poor kitty?" she chastised him. "Poor kitty," the boy doubted. "More like a rabid tiger." "Well, his name is Tiger," Hataru pointed out, petting her captive's black fur. The tomcat was actually purring in her arms. Naruto couldn't believe it. Mission success, Hana grinned. This had gone well. She remembered how her original team used to struggle with this assignment. And Hataru's have done even worse. But now it seemed like a breeze. Compared with the training Tenzo-sensei put them through, this was a walk in the park. After their team was formed, they have slipped into a routine. They would meet every morning at sunrise and go through the personal drills. They had to run around the training grounds, do push-ups, sit-ups and squats until they thought they'll just drop down any time, worked on their taijutsu skills and chakra control. They thought they knew tree walking before, but Tenzo quickly corrected them. "If you can't do it in the heat of a battle, it doesn't count," he said and proceeded to prove the truth in this statement. They had struggled at first, but now they all could spar on a water surface without breaking a sweat. They also started working on their elemental affinities, but they haven't gotten any further than finding out their chakra natures and being explained the basic exercises. Hana had fire, Hataru lightning and Naruto wind. Afternoons varied. Sometimes they would take a D-rank mission, sometimes they sparred against each other, other times they teamed up against their sensei or one of his friends. Afterwards they would discuss the fights and think of a possible better strategy, then give it another go, rinse and repeat. What they dreaded the most were the mock missions. Tenzo would give them an assignment of the same kind typical C-rank missions were and then let them work on it on their own. The objective sounded simple, but something always went terribly wrong. Usually it was an enemy ninja appearing out of nowhere. They hadn't done a whole lot of them, but they gained a huge knowledge of most common ninja mishaps nevertheless. Some afternoons and evenings were reserved for their individual trainings. Hana spent them studying with her aunt and her veterinary studies were coming along nicely. Hataru practiced her swordsmanship with her cousin every time Yugo wasn't on a mission. Then she would just practice her kata or study theory. Naruto was working with Tenzo on his kenjutsu and sometimes ninjutsu. They returned home every night bruised, beaten and completely exhausted, but every one of them improved by leaps and bounds. They also became a true team. Although they haven't completely opened up to each other yet, they were now feeling comfortable in each other's presence. The constant work helped Hana overcome her depression and she started smiling after the first month. All in all, life seemed good for them. Mission room. They returned Tora safely to his owner and watched the poor cat get almost smothered by its overly enthusiastic daimyo's wife. Even Naruto, who had been grumbling about damned furballs from hell the whole way back, felt a pang of sympathy at that sight. Another mission success, the Hokage commented. Your team seems to be doing fine, Tenzo. Are they ready for a C-rank mission? Tenzo hesitated only for a moment. His team had a fair understanding of cooperation and both the girls have already undertaken such missions. Naruto was still young and inexperienced, but he was also resilient and resourceful and Tenzo had full confidence that he'll pull through. And it had been 2 months since the formation of his squad and he had been thinking of asking for one for the last week or so. Yes, they are, he answered confidently. Excellent, the Sandaime smiled. Here is your assignment. It's a search and rescue mission in the Grey Mist Mountains. You'll be looking for a group of missing prospectors. The group failed to return when they were scheduled to, and though that it itself wouldn't be too worrisome, a local hunter found a bear-eating human remains in the area. The ring on its finger and a scar identified the hand as belonging to one of them without a doubt. You are tasked to find them and bring them safely to civilization. In case they are already dead, you are to determine their fate and give a report about it to their superiors. If you find their possessions, they want you to bring them too, especially any maps and mineral samples. Details are in this scroll. Is everything clear? Yes, Hokage-sama, Tenzo answered. Good. You may leave now. Tenzo's apartment. Naruto was bursting with excitement. Finally he was going on his first real ninja mission. The D ranks didn't count. Just like every new genin, he had been terribly disappointed when he got his first one, but he learned to cope and accept them as necessary evil. After all, he needed a certain number of them before he was eligible for higher ranked ones. Yet he couldn't help but grumble every time he had to pull weeds, paint a fence or walk a dog. He didn't even want to think of the time he had to babysit a child older than him. But now he was going on a real mission. Maybe if they would perform well enough, they wouldn't have to do another D rank ever again. He realistically knew that it wasn't going to happen, but one could dream. He was now packing everything he thought he might need. If he didn't know a bit about storage seals, he would have needed a cart for it, but even now his backpack threatened to burst in the seams. Naruto had first learned about sealing when he was 6. Tenzo had been sent on a lengthy mission and he arranged for a friend to babysit. Kanu was a retired shinobi. He once used to be an ANBU, but a hit with a weird jutsu caused him pain attacks at odd times. The medics were completely stumped and couldn't figure out what the problem was, much less find a cure. He supposed he was luckier than those who had lost their limbs or lives in the line of duty, but it forced him to quit his career all the same. Now he made a living by making storage scrolls and exploding tags. He hadn't been too excited to have to watch over a kid and a notoriously hyper one to boot, but it hadn't been as bad as he had expected. He led Naruto to the training grounds, let him go through his routines and settled down to draw his seals. After a while the boy became intrigued and inquired what he was doing. He replied he was making storage seals for shuriken. He fully expected the child to back off, but instead the little blonde was fascinated. That in turn intrigued him. Not many people were willing to study the delicate art of sealing nowadays unless they absolutely had to. And Kanu wasn't inclined to turn away a potential disciple. He started to explain the basic principles and Naruto listened attentively. He seemed to have talent. They soon got to painting his own seals. By the end of their 2-week stay together the boy could seal a shuriken on his own. They continued their lessons even after Tenzo returned, though less frequently. Now the pupil knew not just basic storage seals, but could also make his own blast note. "What are you taking?" Tenzo asked. There's no way you'll need all of these. Aren't you always drilling us on how we should be prepared for anything? The genin replied with a raised eyebrow. I am, confirmed the jounin, but that doesn't mean you have to take all your possessions on a mission. You have to learn to get by with just the basic provisions. If you carry all that, you'll be so tired you won't be able to complete the mission once we arrived to the mountains. Naruto seemed to consider this. But how would I know what to leave behind? I don't know what I would need and what not. You have to think, his guardian explained. What kind of mission are we assigned? A search and rescue one, the boy answered. Correct, Tenzo nodded. And what else do you know? We'll be camping in the mountains. It's going to be cold and wet, the young ninja observed. True. What else? It might take a long time, Naruto guessed. True again. Is that all you can think of? The older man inquired. Well, there might be bears, he offered. Even that is true. But can't you think of anything else? Tenzo looked at him expectantly. It is, Naruto sighed. I'm missing something, aren't I? Yes, Tenzo nodded. Think. Why was our team sent on the mission? The blonde boy scratched his head. Because we're awesome probably isn't the correct answer, he tried. Too true, the jounin answered with a chuckle. It's because we are a free response team. What does that mean? Naruto wondered. That means we can undertake any kind of mission, the team leader explained. We have Hana as a tracker, medic and heavy hitter close-range fighter. Then there's Hataru as a fighter and information gatherer. You are a close to mid-range fighter, tracker and infiltration assassination type. I cover long-range fights and tough opponents. Do you get it now? Maybe, the blonde shrugged. Are we going because we are theoretically able to deal with any situation, because anything can happen on this mission? You got it, Tenzo smiled. We have no idea what's waiting there. The prospectors had guards. They weren't shinobi, but that doesn't mean they were pushovers. They might have been massacred by a superior force or squashed by an avalanche. No way to know what to expect until we get there. I understand, Naruto nodded. So how does it help me to decide what to take? Because it still sounds to me like I need everything. I'll show you. In Izuka clan compound she was leaving the village for the first time since that incident. She felt strangely reluctant to go. She couldn't help but fear something terrible was going to happen. She was scared she'd lose her new team just when she had grown to like them. She wanted to talk with her old sensei, but she couldn't find him. Her mother just advised her to get over it and be a proud Izuka. She knew Tsum was right. She even looked forward to seeing new places, but she couldn't help but worry. Do you have a mission, sis? A young voice asked. Kiba, she exclaimed. Already back from the academy? Of course, sis, the lad rolled his eyes. It's nearly evening. It is, Hana realized with surprise. She must have been lost in thoughts far longer than it seemed. So you have a mission? Her little brother was curious. Yes, she nodded. I'm leaving tomorrow early morning. You're lucky, he whined. When will I go on a mission? When? You graduate, Kiba, she answered. So do your homework properly or it'll never happen. Of course I'll graduate, he took offense. I'm an awesome ninja. She couldn't help but smile. Well, I don't know. You're still stuck at the academy. I won't be forever, he claimed. And then you'll see. I'll make Chunin and then Jounin in no time, he declared with utmost certainty. I'll hold you to your word, Hana smiled. So where are you going, sis? He wanted to know. Or is it secret? I don't know, she shrugged. We aren't supposed to talk about ongoing missions with civilians. Come on, Kiba pleaded. Sorry, Kiba, she shook her head, I can't tell. No fair, he pouted. Can I at least go with you to the gates? He unleashed the puppy eyes of doom on her. Why not, she agreed. It would be nice to have somebody there to bid her farewell. After all, it might be even the last time they'd see each other. She suppressed the depressing thoughts. But don't be late. We aren't waiting for anybody. Hataru's apartment. Hataru was packing methodically. She had been only on a couple of C-ranks before, but she had a fair idea what to expect from this one. Rain, cold and lots of camping in the wild. It didn't sound like it would be anything exciting, just a routine. But it would look good on her record and get her a step closer to finally becoming Chunin. Village gates. They were scheduled to meet at dawn. Naruto had been there for an hour already, he couldn't wait to hit the road. Tenzo and Hataru arrived with a few minutes to spare. Hana was almost running late. Hurry up or I'll just leave you behind, her voice came suddenly from nearby. I don't want to miss my first mission with my new team. I'm running, sis, a child's voice replied. Too slow, Hana added. Then they rounded the corner and came in sight of Konoha's gates. Finally, Naruto greeted. I was getting worried you won't make it. I'd have no trouble if that little twerp hadn't insisted on seeing me off, the dog mistress said. I'm wounded, sis. I thought you wanted me here, the youth with two red fang-like marks of the Inuzuka clan on his cheeks answered. Would you introduce us? Of course, Hana replied. This is my younger brother Kiba. And those are my teammates, Tenzo-sensei, Yuzuki Hataru and Uzumaki Naruto. That is a ninja? Kiba remarked disbelievingly. He looks younger than me. Don't be rude, bro, Hana chastised him. And yes, he is a ninja. And not a bad one. I don't believe it, the younger Inuzuka stated. How old is he? 8, his sister answered. 8? Kiba couldn't believe his ears. I'm 8 too and I just started the academy. Now do you see why you have to study harder? The older Inuzuka asked rhetorically. If you two are quite finished, Tenzo interrupted, can we go? I would like to reach our destination by nightfall today. Yes, let's go, Hana agreed. So long, Kiba. See you. Well, whenever we return. And then they turned and walked through the gates. Their first adventure together was awaiting them. Near the gray mist mountains they had been running all day. Naruto had to work hard to keep up with his older and taller teammates, but his monstrous stamina allowed him to manage. But when they stopped for the night, he just fell down on the ground panting and refused to move until Tenzo threatened to eat his dinner. That made him to get up and help setting the camp. So what's the plan for tomorrow? Hataru asked. What's there to plan? Naruto questioned. We don't know anything about them so we'll just have to go to the last place they were seen and start tracking. Do you have any idea how long ago that was? Hana asked. Naruto racked his memory. Over 3 months? You've got it, Tiny, the dog user confirmed. Even an Inuzuka can't follow a scent that old, especially considering the frequent downpours here. What about the arm, then? The blonde offered. That is a better idea, but I'm afraid it won't work as well. Hana shook her head. Why? Naruto didn't understand. She didn't have to answer. It started to rain. The following day the morning dawned cold and gloomy. The mist that gave the mountains their name fell down thick and they couldn't see any further than a few steps. The peaks that had loomed ominously over them the day before disappeared from their sight completely. The team was following a narrow path, huddled in their warm traveling cloaks, Hana's dogs at the point trying to catch scent of anything interesting. So far they caught only an unlucky hare which they promptly ate. They hoped they were going the right way. The map the clients provided wasn't very informative, only a roughly drawn sketch with a red cross marking the place the expedition entered the range and another where the arm was found. They were on the opposite sides of the mountains. Naruto found it strange that the mining company didn't have a better map of perspective or sources. He asked Tenzo about it. They probably do, but they aren't showing it to anybody, the older man answered. Don't they want their people to be saved? The boy wondered. Oh, they do, the Jounin replied, but not at the price of their secrets falling into the hands of their competition. If there really is an ore lode, it can earn them a lot more money than they lose on a group of dead prospectors. Naruto considered the explanation. If there is so much money at stake, why didn't they hire a more experienced team? You'll find that rich people are unwilling to part even with a tiny portion of their wealth, the wood user explained. The company most likely doesn't expect their people to be still alive and hired us only for show. And I find it also believable that the expedition had sent them some report of their progress before they disappeared. If it is so, why didn't they tell us? It was something the blonde couldn't understand. Like I said, they don't want us to find their newest lode and possibly tell somebody else. That's sick, Naruto commented. Boy, you have yet to see anything, Tenzo remarked. They have been walking for hours. The fog had yet to lift. The pathway led them uphill. The trees around them changed. Instead of the lush forests they knew from the vicinity of Konoha, spiky conifers were now growing around them. Even the ever-present chirping of birds have slowly waned and only an occasional rustle of grass let them know that they weren't in a dead land. We should be close now, Tenzo announced when they entered a wide valley covered in strange mountain grass and flowers. According to this map, the arm has been found somewhere on the other side of this small plain, near the creek. They left the already dwindling path and crossed the meadow. It turned out to be a marshland in disguise and Hataru grumbled about getting mud in her shoes. The three genin were eternally grateful to their sensei for his merciless drills in water walking. Hana sent her dogs to sniff out the area, but predictably they found nothing. What now? Hataru asked. Now we think about where an arm could have come from to end up here, Tenzo answered. From up there, Hataru pointed to the steep valley side. Or maybe it floated down the stream, Naruto suggested. That's more likely, Hana agreed. There are bushes, trees, and boulders up the slope. Nothing as small as a human hand could have rolled through it. But the bear could have carried it from anywhere. And we aren't even sure we found the correct place. So we follow the brook upstream, Naruto said. You got it, kid, the Inuzuka answered. They set off. Evening they followed the creek until it turned into a small trickle. Nothing could have floated down this, Hataru pointed out. Is it just me or are we fresh out of ideas? Naruto spoke. The fog was thick as ever and the nearing dusk stole what little light found its way through it. It seems like we won't find anything today, so let's just start a camp, Tenzo decided. His team was delighted to hear those words. Next morning dawned bright and sunny. The four ninja looked around themselves in wonder. They found it hard to believe they were still in the same place. The oppressive mist from yesterday was completely gone and imposing mountain peaks stood around them tall and proud, bathing in the golden sunlight, slivery snow glittering on their tops. Azure sky reflected in a lake they have completely missed the evening before. It's beautiful, Naruto whispered reverently. It is, Tenzo agreed. You don't get to see such near Konoha. I still remember when I saw the mountains for the first time. I had to pick my jaw from the ground as well. Can we climb up there and take a look around? The young blonde asked excitedly. I mean we might see something from the expedition from up there. I don't see why not, his guardian answered with a smile. It's not like we have a better plan anyway. And it might actually work, who knows? If not, then we'll just have to trek through the whole range until we find something. But that's a huge area, Hataru almost panicked. That's true, their Jounin sensei nodded. But such are the perils of shinobi life. And never forget, it could have been worse. The three genin winced when they remembered some of the mock missions they took during their training. Each of them started to count all the places an enemy could hide, name all the dangerous animals that could live here and search for potential avalanche sites. Later they made a good time to the nearest overpass. They encountered no trouble on the way there, only some stones giving out under their feet, but their finely honed reflexes allowed them to find purchase before they could slide down the slope. The vastness of the gray mist mountains opened before their eyes. They could see peaks, valleys, creeks, ravines, lakes, meadows, waterfalls, boulders and forests, but they couldn't see a single sign of the missing expedition. What now? Naruto asked dejectedly. He seemed to only now realize how much ground they would have to cover. We'll search the next valley, Hana answered. And then the next. And then the next. And next. And again. Do you get it, Squirt? The boy grimaced. Unfortunately, yes. We'd better begin then. Hey, what's that? Naruto pointed at the peak across a steep valley. What? Tenzo asked. I'm not sure, Naruto answered hesitantly. I thought I saw a flash of something bright purple, but it's gone now. I haven't seen anything. What about you, girls? They both shook their heads. Well. It's not like we have a better idea. Where did you see it, Naruto? Over there, the blue-eyed boy pointed. On the peak with the split top. Just above the large patch of ice. I see what you mean, the Jounin confirmed. Okay, team, let's go. Reaching the spot Naruto pointed out took them the rest of the day. The sun was about to touch the horizon when they stopped. So, where exactly was it? Tenzo inquired. Somewhere here, Naruto answered. I can't tell exactly. I don't see anything now though. You're not the only one, Hataru commented. There, Hana pointed to the left. What? Everybody turned in surprised. I noticed it, the Inuzuka explained. It's a piece of cloth. It's purple on one side and gray on the other. That's why we couldn't see it unless the wind lifted it up. You're right, the youngest member of the team exclaimed. I can see it now. It looks like it's weighted down by that boulder, otherwise it would have been blown away. I'll bring it here. Don't be hasty, Tenzo chided. The rocks around it don't look too stable. Naruto paid his warning no heed. He took off at a jog heading towards a man-sized piece of rock laying on the precipice. Don't worry, he shouted over his shoulder. I'm small and light, so I'm the best man for this job. He grabbed the cloth. There, see, no reason to worry. He pulled on the cloth. It refused to give. Not wanting to tear it, he pushed the stone. The boulder moved unexpectedly easily. Naruto yelped in surprise and lost his footing. He grabbed the nearest rock, but it gave out under him. He fell backwards onto a small glacier. He tried to get a hold on it, but even when he applied chakra to his hands, the only thing he accomplished was taking small chunks of snow and ice with him. It didn't slow down his descent a bit. He glanced downwards and immediately wished he could just take it back. He was nearing the edge of the iceberg rapidly. After that there was a drop. He couldn't see how high it was, but given his luck probably a lot. I'm going to die here, went through his head. He tried jumping upwards, but he succeeded only in kicking up some snow. His short life flashed in front of his eyes, but nothing he saw showed him a way out of this situation. Just when he was about to fall over the edge, a desperate idea struck him. He remembered a practice session with Tenzo. The man had shown him a new jutsu and he had been itching to try it out. He had formed the necessary hand seals. Suiton, water shockwave. The jet of liquid had shot from his mouth and towards his sparring partner. Unfortunately, he had forgotten he had been standing on water surface. The reaction propelled him backwards and he skidded several feet before coming to a stop. Naruto prayed this might help him in his current situation. There was no water around and snow didn't really count. His fingers flew through the required positions at a speed previously unmatched. He exhaled and spat out the water. Instead of the expected trickle, he got a wide stream of boiling, steaming liquid. What's happening? He wondered briefly. A familiar burning heat seeped into his veins. The jutsu stopped his descent, but he was already in the air with no purchase in sight. The backlash of the technique also made him rotate backwards in such a way that he couldn't use it again. It would have just sent him crashing down faster. He panicked. He tried to grab the side of the mountain even though it was out of his reach. He didn't find it strange when a red claw of chakra extended from his arm and plowed into the rock. It tore out a large chunk of stone but failed to find purchase. He was still falling. He turned in the air again and saw the ground almost upon him. He thrust his arms in front of him. There was a flash of red, then pain, then darkness. Naruto! Hana shrieked when she saw her teammate disappear over the edge. She couldn't lose another teammate, not so soon after. She started forward, but a strong hand grabbed her upper arm, halting her progress. "Let me go," she shouted, trying to free herself. "No," Tenzo commanded. "Do you want to fall as well? The ground's unstable there." "I can't," she spoke, when her dog started to whine and cower. Their fur stood on its ends. "What?" she asked, startled. She could feel it now herself, an ominous, oppressive feeling in the air caused by power like she never encountered before. No, that wasn't true. She had felt it somewhere, but it had been so long ago that she'd forgotten it. Now the buried memory was pushing its way to the forefront of her consciousness. Almost as suddenly as it begun, the terrifying aura disappeared and the blurry snippet of a memory with it. But she now knew it was there. What was that? Hataru asked, equally perturbed. "I'm not sure," Tenzo answered. It wasn't a lie. He had recognized the chakra, it was unmistakable after all, but he didn't know what exactly it meant. He knew that the Kyuubi's power manifested when Naruto was in danger and he only hoped the boy survived. "We have to find Naruto," the Inuzuka insisted. "How would you do it?" "It'll be dark soon," the purple-haired girl pointed out. "We have good noses," the dog mistress reminded her. "Can it tell you which rock is loose?" Their sensei picked at an obvious flaw in her plan. Hana seemed taken aback. This hadn't occurred to her. "We'll use a rope. If someone fell down, the others can catch him," Tenzo decided. "And what if you fall, sensei? Wouldn't you just drag us down with you?" Hataru couldn't help but worry. "I can catch myself," he assured them. "There's a reason I'm a jounin after all." "If you say so, sensei." They quickly tied themselves to a rope and started their slow descent into the ravine. The sun has set and night fell on the mountains. With Naruto, he woke up to find himself in a dark, damp corridor. "Where am I?" he wondered. He tried to remember how he had gotten here. His mind came up only with images of mountains, then a cloth, and then a fall. Oh. Am I dead? No, this didn't look like any kind of afterlife he had ever heard about. But then, what did anyone really know about such things? It's not like they visited there before. He got up and started walking slowly. He had no idea for how long he had walked in the knee-deep water. Where did it come from? Time seemed to have no meaning here. He suddenly realized that the corridor wasn't so dark anymore. There was blood-red light coming from somewhere ahead. He continued his slow advance. Then he stood inside a large chamber without remembering entering it. The walls and ceiling were lost somewhere in the darkness around, only the echoing sounds of dripping water hinted at their presence. Directly in front of him stood a huge gate composed of gleaming iron bars. Where one would expect a lock, there was just a piece of paper with the word "seal" written calligraphically. Behind the bars laid the source of the depressive illumination. Naruto squinted and made a few steps forward to get a better look at that thing. It moved. The boy stopped. Two giant red eyes opened and bored straight into him. He froze. "So you have finally come," sounded a deep resonating voice. It seemed to be everywhere, but the young blonde knew it was the creature in front him that spoke. He had never seen it before, yet he had no doubt about its nature. "So here I am," he answered boldly. He didn't actually feel it and the creature could tell. "Come near so I can see you better," it commanded. Naruto's legs moved on their own volition. He realized what was happening and stopped. Why should I? He decided to go on with the defiant act. "Because I said so," the demon roared. "That's not a good reason," the youth replied. The beast lunged at the gate. The boy took a frightened step back. The bijou couldn't break the gate, but red liquid started to seep through the bars. "I'll show you why you should listen to me," Kyubi growled. Naruto frantically looked around. He just knew that the red closing on him was bad, but he had no idea how to stop it. "Stop," he shouted. "Are you sure?" the huge fox asked. "You stupid mortal don't realize it, but my power is the only thing keeping you alive. Your weak flesh is currently lying broken at the bottom of a ravine. If I stop the flow, you'll die." "And what would happen to you then?" the demon's vessel countered. The demon stayed silent. "I thought so," smirked the child. "You can't afford to let me die. Don't be so sure of yourself, human. You have no idea what I can do." The beast loomed over him ominously. "And what exactly can you do behind the bars?" The young shinobi was slowly gaining his confidence back. The fox grinned. It included a lot of long sharp teeth. "Do you really want to find out?" Naruto suddenly wasn't so sure of himself. "I thought so," the nine-tailed beast nodded contentedly. "Remember this, little kitling. I am always here. I see everything you do. I can aid or hinder you. What I'll do depends on what I feel like doing, and I rarely feel like helping out people I don't like, which means nearly everyone, though I might sometimes do it anyway if it promises to be funny. And never anger me. I might then just retract all my chakra from your system and then you'll see how pathetic you are without it. If it's all, leave." And Naruto woke up in darkness. With the team their descent was too slow. Although the moon shone brightly in the starry sky, it served mostly to deepen the shadows. Every one of them had slipped at least once, but the rope had always served its purpose. There had been a close call when a boulder gave under Tenzo's legs and the whole company started falling, but then trees shot up from the ground and halted them. "That was close," Hana remarked, trying to slow down her racing heartbeat. "Wow," Hataru exclaimed. "Can you just build us a stairway?" "I'm afraid that would be too draining," the man replied. "I was just asking," the swordswoman shrugged. Tenzo was forced to do it anyway when the slope became too steep. Afterwards he sat down and panted heavily. "No more jutsu today," he announced to no one in particular. "We're all tired, but we cannot stop," Hana spoke. "Not when he's lying there wounded. We're almost down now." Then the darkness around them deepened. They looked up. Sometime during the night the wind had picked up and brought heavy clouds. And to stress the point about mountain weather being fickle, it started to snow heavily. "That was the last thing we needed," Hataru declared. Nobody disagreed. Bottom of the valley for a long time Naruto laid unmoving. He felt like he broke every single bone in his body, and though he knew that wasn't true, he could still count a fair number of fractures. Most of them were on his arms, but his left ankle hurt like hell and 2 or 3 of his ribs must have been cracked. And to top it, his vision was blurred, signaling concussion, and the pain in his stomach hinted at internal damage. He was no medic, but he could tell he was bad off. He tried to find something positive in his situation. My team is still out there, was the only one he could come up with, besides simply being still alive, but he didn't expect them to find him any sooner than in the morning, maybe noon. That is if they didn't think he was already dead and abandoned him. He felt a sharp stab of pain at that thought. Tenzo surely wouldn't leave him for the dead, but a sliver of doubt still lingered. What if his guardian thought he hadn't survived? But the older man should by now know he was tough. And what if they fell to their deaths trying to save him? The idea sent chills running down his spine. He would never forgive himself. What would he tell to Hana's annoying little brother and whatever families his teammates had? It occurred to him they had never talked about it. There was no time for idle chit-chat during their practice sessions. He resolved to learn more about his squad should they all get out of this alive. Then it started to snow. He knew he should try to find shelter or at least conserve his body heat, but he was still too hurt to move. He settled for admiring the ethereal beauty of snowflakes instead. There wasn't much chance to do so in Konoha. In fact, he never saw snow there, but he heard it had happened before. He registered a sound that didn't belong. He was tempted to simply ignore it. He felt lazy and comfortable and warm. He just wanted to close his eyes and sleep. But some survival instinct forced him to respond. He lifted his head to search for its source. The pain hit him once again along with a sense of vertigo. He realized he was gravely wounded and slowly freezing to death. He gritted his teeth. He had to move or he'd sure die here. And Naruto didn't want to die. He braced himself for the pain and slowly lifted himself on his elbows. He thanked Kami his upper arms weren't shattered. He had to stop for a while and wait until he could think clearly again. Then he opened his eyes, he didn't remember closing them, and looked around. He couldn't see much, just his closest surroundings covered in a layer of white. The sound resounded again and Naruto thought it was closer than the last time. He tried to determine its source. Nothing. Then it sounded right next to his ear. He startled and promptly fell. The pain almost knocked him unconscious right then, but he somehow managed to stay awake. He turned his head a bit. A wolf. For a moment he hoped it was just one of Hana's dogs, but no such luck. This was a big and hungry creature of the wild. And his arms were broken. It was official, his life sucked. Especially what little time was left of it. He went through his list of available options. It was pitifully short. Only his right leg appeared to be in a working state. Unfortunately, he couldn't kick the animal from this position. He racked his brain desperately for another way to save himself. But he didn't know a single technique that didn't require the use of his hands. He had barely started on the elemental recomposition. Wait, that was it. He couldn't cut the leaf yet, but the last time he tried a small dent appeared near its edge. And if he didn't know a usable jutsu, he just had to create his own. He took a deep breath, desperately ignoring the protests of his ribs, and concentrated on sharpening his chakra and sending it to his lungs. He moved his head that he was now facing the wolf head-on. Then he screamed. A jet of charged air rushed out of his lungs, hitting the prowling predator in the side. The beast was blasted off its paws. Cuts appeared in its coat and red flowed out. The animal howled in pain. It ran off to lick its wounds and look for some easier prey. Naruto knew nothing of that. He fainted. Back on the slope, wolf, Hataru startled. That's not good. It sounded scared, Hana added. What could have happened to it? And what was the first screech? I've never heard anything like that before. Maybe Naruto is up and defending himself, Tenzo offered. His students looked at him dubiously. After that fall? It would be a miracle if he survived. And it wasn't his voice, the Inuzuka commented. You never know, the man replied. We're at the bottom now, the purple-haired Kunoichi remarked. Finally, the dog mistress exclaimed. She quickly untied her dogs from the rope. Go, boys. Find Naruto, she commanded them. They obediently disappeared in the snow. Not too long after that there was a joyful bark. They found him, the Inuzuka translated. Quick! She ran off. The others followed at a more cautious pace. They were still worried about what could be lurking in the darkness. Naruto! Hana shouted in a panicked voice. The others hurried towards her. They could soon see what she was so worried about. The boy was lying unmoving on the ground, the white snow covering most of his body. Only his face remained unobscured. Is he alive? Hataru asked. It was hard to believe that he might be. Yes, the dog user confirmed. She quickly started a medical jutsu and ran a diagnosis. It's bad, she announced. He has multiple fractures, ruptured spleen, damaged lungs and hypothermia. There are also signs of chakra depletion and something I can't decipher. What does it mean? Hataru inquired. We have to keep him warm and pray, the medic elaborated. The next day morning dawned sunny and bright and the peaks glittered like they were made of gold. No rays found their way to the bottom of the valley. Their makeshift camp remained cold. Hana moved from her spot beside Naruto. Due to lack of firewood they had to cuddle together to keep their wounded teammate warm. She ran through a diagnostic technique. The results convinced her that she shouldn't use veterinary techniques on humans. There was no way the young boy could have gotten better in such a short time. She considered it a small miracle that he hadn't passed on yet, but when she took a good look at him, it seemed like some color returned to his cheeks. She shrugged it off. It must be the light. She took out her bottle and tried to make him drink. A lot of the water ended spilled on the ground, but some liquid still got in. She closed the bottle and laid back down beside her patient. They were alone currently. Both Hataru and Tenzo sensei left earlier to look for firewood and maybe even something fresh to eat. Her dogs were prowling around the perimeter, keeping watch in case another wolf decided to try for an easy meal. She sighed. They had been here only for a few hours and she already hated this place. It was cold and wet and the ground underneath them was hard and bumpy. Worst possible place for a wounded child to be, but unfortunately Naruto's condition didn't allow him to be moved. They were in for a lengthy stay here. Down in the valley Hataru was following the stream. What had been a small trickle just yesterday grew into a fair-sized creek due to the melting snow and the water was still rising. She just hoped it won't cause a flood, or worse a landslide. They definitely didn't need any more trouble. Her feet slipped on an ice-covered rock. Only her quick reflexes saved her from plunging into the icy brook. She stopped for a moment. They couldn't afford another wounded either. Then something caught her eye. A shape that didn't belong there was hiding under the white covering. She cautiously approached it and brushed away the snow. She hadn't been mistaken. It really was a backpack. And it certainly wasn't one of theirs. Bingo, she whispered. It seemed that at least part of their luck turned. In her opinion it was long overdue. The camp Hataru proudly showed the rest of the squad her find. Excellent work, Tenzo praised her. We know we're on the right track. Once Naruto can move around, we'll follow it. That will take a long time, Hana commented. I know, the man sighed. Have you looked inside yet? No, she shook her head, I was waiting for the team to gather. Well, then open it now, her sensei suggested. Hataru pulled the zipper. She didn't know what she had been expecting, but the contents of the bag seemed completely ordinary, just some clothes and provisions. She felt oddly let down. She began to search the side pockets. She found just a half-empty matchbox, completely sodden, and a broken compass. He probably got lost, she muttered. Hana had been looking over the clothes, when her fingers touched something in one of a jacket pockets. She carefully took out a piece of folded paper. It was wet, but it had been spared worst of the moisture. Careful with it, Tenzo advised. She began slowly unfolding it. What is that? Hataru wondered at the sight of curved colorful lines and strange squiggly signs. A map, her sensei explained. Or more like a plan, since it seems to cover only a small area. But which one? Hana asked. Your guess is as good as mine, Tenzo answered. Isn't that just the kind of things our clients wanted? A voice they hadn't expected to hear joined the discussion. Naruto. You're awake, the Inuzuka exclaimed. Yes, and I'm hungry, the boy added. Stay still, I'll look you over, the medic commanded. Okay, but be quick, the boy agreed. I'd eat a horse. And I have to. You know. Yes, I know, she nodded. Now hold still. What? Hana startled when she ran the jutsu over him. Is it bad? Naruto inquired. She didn't answer. She repeated her technique. The diagnosis was the same. It seems you're healing just fine, she answered. In fact, too fine to be humanly possible. She couldn't miss the boy tensing. What is it, a blood limit I've never heard before? Something like that, the blonde replied unconvincingly. Then why haven't you just said so, the Inuzuka huffed. You worried me needlessly. Sorry, Naruto apologized. Don't worry about it, the dog user waved her hand over the matter. Now rest and concentrate on healing. I don't know about you, but I'd like to leave here as soon as possible. Me too. 2 days later Naruto's condition finally improved enough for him to walk. He tried to run ignoring the pain in his still mending bones, but Tenzo managed to stop him. If you hurt yourself again, I'll bind you and personally carry you all the way to Konoha, he threatened. The boy pouted but obeyed. They carefully set on the road. They would have been going slow anyway, they were searching for the remains of the lost expedition. Naruto insisted on carrying his own backpack, but his guardian was unrelenting. Heal first, he commanded. The boy pouted, but had to obey. In fact, he didn't mind too much. He was still sore all over. They walked down the valley at a leisure pace. Hana's dogs were running left and right sniffing for something interesting. The snow had finally melted, but gray clouds covered the sky promising another batch anytime. One of the Haero triplets barked. What have you found? Its mistress asked. The group headed its way. They soon saw its find. It was a human bone, ulna to be precise. Tooth marks showed where hungry wolves had torn the meat off. But that wasn't so interesting. Look at this, Tenzo pointed out a deep gash. That wasn't done by any predator. It was caused by a sword. Bandits, Naruto guessed, or ninja. Perhaps, but don't get too excited. We're in the middle of nowhere, the more experienced man reminded. Highwaymen would die of hunger here. There is a possibility that somebody hired Shinobi to dispose of the group, but they would have been better at hiding the bodies. Maybe they thought they didn't have to bother, Naruto offered. We are in the middle of nowhere after all. It's possible, Tenzo agreed. But professionals wouldn't be so careless anyway. We won't know until we find the rest. But for now, be extra cautious. Why? Hana questioned. This bone is old. Certainly over a week. Because on a mission you never know, answered the Jounin. He designed the mock missions from real-life experience after all. Later they had found more remains of the unlucky expedition, a cleaned bone here, a torn article of clothing there. Most of them were scratched by animal teeth, but some bore marks of weapons as well. They looked for any clue that would shed some light on the prospector's last day, but they had been unlucky so far. They couldn't puzzle out more that they had been attacked and slain, and then the wildlife had feasted on their bodies. So far there was no hint about their attackers' identities. A bit of breakthrough came late that afternoon. It came in the form of a leather bag, better preserved than most of the other equipment. "It's heavy," Hana observed when she picked it up. "What's inside?" Naruto asked. "Rocks," she answered. "Rocks?" The boy sounded disappointed. "Yes," she confirmed. "These must be the mineral samples the company wanted so badly. We'll take them with us." "So we have to drag a bag full of rock all the way through the mountains?" "Great," Naruto complained. "It's not like you have to carry it yourself," Hataru commented. That was true. While the wounded boy had been deemed fit enough to walk on his own, he wasn't allowed to carry his luggage. Tenzo had his backpack instead. The blonde pouted. "I can carry it, you know." "No, I don't," Hana stated. "And shouldn't you be happy to avoid work?" "No." Naruto protested. "It's just. I haven't done anything but cause trouble on this mission. I don't want to be so useless, not even able to carry my own things." "You aren't useless," the Inuzuka consoled him. "You've noticed the cloth. If you didn't, we could have been still just wandering around aimlessly." "That was just luck," Naruto argued. "Even luck is important," Hataru claimed. "Yet I wish I could do more," the blonde sighed. "I understand perfectly," Hana nodded. "Maybe you'll get your chance next time." "Yes, maybe," the boy replied. "So what's in the bag?" The purple-haired kunoichi decided to change the course of conversation. "I clearly remember saying rocks," the Inuzuka answered. "I know, but what kind of rocks?" Hataru clarified. "Did they find some precious gems or gold or something that's worth killing for? Let's have a look." The dog mistress knelt down and started going through the bag's contents. The squad looked on attentively. "Rock, rock, another rock and a stone for a change," Hana commented. "And here's another rock and yet another stone. And what's that?" She picked one of them for a closer inspection. It looked no different from the other ones to their eyes, except for a few glittering specks. "Maybe they had really found gold," Naruto offered jokingly. "Don't be stupid," Hataru chided. "It's probably just fool's gold." "Pass it here," Tenzo commanded. "Guys, this looks like it might be real gold." "No kidding?" Naruto couldn't believe his ears. "That sounds like something from an adventure story." "That sounds like a reason for murder," Hataru corrected. "I don't know, those few dots wouldn't buy you dinner even if they really were gold," Hana pointed out. "Then maybe there's more elsewhere," Naruto speculated. "Maybe, and maybe it isn't even real gold," Tenzo entered the argument. "None of us is an expert. We shouldn't come to any conclusions without any proof." They resumed their journey. After 2 days their progress had been slowed, but they were able to pick up their pace as Naruto's condition kept improving. When they reached the foot of the mountains, he insisted he was all right and could tree hop again. His medic insisted he'd take it easy anyway. They had found some more human remains, but that had ended before they entered the forest. After that they came across only one body, nearly eaten by carrion birds. The remains of his clothes hinted that he had been a soldier, but there were no weapons. "Isn't it strange?" Hataru wondered. "I thought the culprits had taken them," Naruto replied. "But who robbed this one?" "It happened as a separate incident," the sword wielder pointed out. "Maybe he was one of them and they argued about splitting the loot," the boy offered. "Who would have thought, Tiny actually said something intelligent," Hana teased. "I have my moments," the blonde smirked. Not too long after that they left the mountain range. The valley they had been following widened into a shallow depression. Rolling grassy hills spread out before them. "Where now?" Hataru asked. "They could have taken any direction from here." And the track is so cold even my dogs cannot pick it, Hana added. That's true, Tenzo admitted, but we can always ask. If I'm not mistaken, there's village just over that hill. They had no idea how he could tell, but he was right. There really was a tiny hamlet just where he said. What the hell happened here? Naruto wondered aloud. The reason for his question was apparent. One of the houses in the settlement was burnt down and there was a spot that looked suspiciously like blood on the wall of another. Also, the herbs and vegetables in several gardens were broken, footprints still recognizable in the yards. A dead giveaway was also the fact that the villagers scattered and ran upon seeing them approach. It looks like a bandit raid, Tenzo guessed from experience. It seems we're still on the right track. It had taken them quite a while to find a person willing to talk to them, but eventually they managed to convince a young man that they weren't going to rob them off and slit their throats in their sleep. Then they asked him about recent happenings. They came over a week ago, the man started. They just threatened everyone into taking them in. They took whatever they wanted, including women. Jiro tried to fight them, but they just beat him up and set his house on fire, with him inside. No one dared to speak a word against them after that. They spent 6 days here. Some of them were roughened up and they were waiting for them to recuperate. They left just the day before yesterday. We're catching up to them, Naruto exclaimed. Let's go. And just where do you think you are going? Tenzo stopped him. You have no idea where are they headed. And besides, it's almost evening. We're staying here for the night and we'll try to gather more information about them. Understood? Understood, the youngest member of the squad confirmed, a bit put down. But even he had to admit that the Jounin was right. They covered the ground much faster than any civilian. The tracks in front of them were fresh and clear, so they could follow them without trouble even if they didn't have the keen noses of the Haero triplets to help them. Therefore they reached the city the bandit company had settled for the night not too long after sunset. Despite the late hour, the streets were bustling with life, the street lamps providing illumination rivaling daylight. Naruto was staring wide-eyed. He had never seen anything like this. How are we going to find them in here? He wondered aloud. They managed to interrogate enough of the villagers to piece together the renegade's plans. It seemed they weren't overly concerned with discovery, their crime happening in one of the remotest parts of the Fire Country, but they weren't taking needless chances either. The peasants weren't sure about it, but it sounded like their leaders had some previous experience with evading law. I picked some sense on the way here, Hana announced. Some of them I recognize from that village. But finding them among so many people won't be easy. Can you do it? Tenzo asked. I think so. I can still smell their tracks, the Inuzuka assured them. Then lead on. Blue Swan and Haero locked himself in his room. He shut the window panes and cautiously made sure that he was really alone. If anybody saw him looking through the small closet or under the low bed, they would call him paranoid, but he knew better. It never hurt to make sure, it was the only thing that kept him alive for his long dubious career. His search concluded, he calmed down. He truly was alone and safe. Only then he dared to take out a small pouch from a secret pocket in his vest. Despite its size, the thing was heavy. Haero weighted it in his hand contentedly. He had never expected such a success when he had accepted his last job, but they had hit gold. Literally. He laid the bag on the small table and carefully undid the string holding it close. He savored the moment as he slowly opened it. Its contents glinted bright yellow in the candlelight and he was once again struck by its sheer beauty. He could do nothing but stare at it for hours on end. This was what he always strived for. The family he had been born into hadn't been poor, but they weren't wealthy either. They had never starved, but they couldn't afford anything costly as well. And to make the point clearer, they lived near the rich district in the capital, both of his parents being servants. He grew up surrounded by lavish luxury that wasn't his, knowing that he most likely would become a servant too, silent, invisible, catering to his master's needs without even being acknowledged. Haero hated such life. He decided to change it and find his own destiny. He had no set plan until one day he encountered a ninja. That young man was hired by one of the local nobles for something or other. Haero never knew nor cared, but he was amazed at the power the shinobi emitted. Here was a person who didn't have to bow to anyone, strong enough to go wherever he wanted and fell whoever stood in his way. It was then that Haero knew what his path in life would be. He ran from home the following day. He barely remembered to leave a note for his parents. It was the last time he ever saw them, but it never really bothered him. His old way of life simply gave way for a new one. That was how things were. He wandered for weeks before he eventually reached Konoha. He felt like he entered heaven. For a long time he just strolled down the streets and admired the shinobi and kunoichi milling around. Then he entered the ninja academy. It had been a huge disappointment. He had to endure useless lessons of history, and when it came to the practical ones, he found himself left in the dust by his snotty clan brats of classmates. Once again he found himself in a world of nobility who towered above him, ready to stomp him in the ground like a bug without even caring. He tried to study harder, but to no avail. He flunked. He couldn't bring himself to admit it was from a lack of talent, he blamed favoritism instead. He never managed to graduate. After 4 years he left the village hidden in the leaves and set on the road again. He appropriated a sword and became a mercenary instead. Even his meager ninja training gave him an edge against other swordsmen for hire, and he soon found himself the commander of a small company. And because of his abilities he was able to secure lucrative contracts. For a while things were looking up. But all too soon he found out that people who wanted some really important job done well hired shinobi. The thought never failed to make him furious. Just what was so wonderful about them? His lads could do their work just as well, yet they never got their hands on any really big money. They were making a decent income, but it was never enough for Haero. He changed his career again. He figured that if people wouldn't pay him money, he'll have to take it instead. He became a highwayman instead. To his great dismay he realized that few people carried large amounts of cash while traveling, and those who did brought a lot of skilled guards along. Another thing he failed to take into consideration was the law enforcement. Soon they were being chased by samurai battalions all around the countryside. He escaped, but too many of his comrades weren't so lucky. But he didn't care. It wasn't like they had been close friends or something. He decided to lie low and refrain from crossing the law for a while. What was left of his company alongside with a couple of others was hired to guard an expedition into the Grey Mist Mountains. It was a perfect opportunity to lie low and make some money to boot. The cold and humid climate of the mountains was a bit of a downside, but it was better than the gallows. And then it happened. One of the prospectors randomly digging into the ground actually dug out gold. Nobody could quite believe their eyes, something about the peak not being the right kind of stone for this, but there was the proof lying in front of their eyes. And there was more of it. The group decided to stay there for longer than planned and eke some more. Haero watched as the pile grew, and with it grew his temptation. Soon it became too much to resist. He spoke to his old comrades and some of the new ones. It didn't take long for a plan to form. It was rather simplistic, but he never believed in complicated ones. They tended to backfire. And backfiring plans were one thing Haero hated even more than being poor and insignificant. Unfortunately, even the most straightforward of schemes could go wrong, as he soon realized. Someone warned the expedition, and they and a few of the new guards were alert and waiting when they attacked. Also, some of the prospectors were quite skilled in wielding hammers and pickaxes and were willing to use them to crack skulls instead of rocks. A battle broke out. His group eventually prevailed thanks to their greater numbers and experience, but not before they suffered casualties. And he strongly suspected somebody managed to escape, but he wasn't about to chase them over the steep peaks. The chances of them reaching civilization were low anyway, and by the time they could reach the authorities his gang would be long gone. They just gathered what gold they could find and set for a journey to the lowlands. They went too slow. It irked Haero, but he couldn't do much about it. Some of his guys were wounded, one of them even dying. They stopped in the nearest village until they recuperated. It took too long in his opinion. And to top it of his new band couldn't even behave themselves, needlessly showing that they lived on the other side of the law. He was half tempted just to abandon them to their fates, but he would be risking a mutiny. So he stayed, nearly tearing out his hair with impatience, half expecting soldiers to appear at any time. But none did. Yet he didn't allow himself to relax until they were back on the road. And once they entered the city, he was positive they've shaken any potential pursuit. But as he retied the pouch, his ears picked a noise that didn't belong in the inn. He straightened up and listened, his hand grabbing the handle of his katana. Then it sounded again. Just a dog, he recognized it now. He couldn't believe he got so worked up for some stupid mangy mutt. All this stress must be getting to him. He needed a nice long vacation. Fortunately he could afford it now. He released the hold on his sword. Then the door opened suddenly and he realized that trouble had found him after all. On the street, here, Hana pointed at a 2-story building. It bore a sign saying Blue Swan Inn. Are you sure? Naruto doubted. It looked too respectable to be full of criminals. Of course I am sure, the kunoichi snapped. What have I told you about Inuzuka noses? I know, the youth threw his hands up defensively, I just never imagined bandit hideouts like this. And how should it look like then? Hataru raised an eyebrow. I don't know, the boy answered, this just looks too respectable. Appearances are often misleading, Tenzo commented philosophically. How are we going to do it? Hataru considered. There are too many civilians to just barge in, and it's not like the bandits have it written on their foreheads. Have I taught you nothing? Their sensei sighed. Remember. Lesson number 3, if you don't know, gather information. So no battle today, Naruto grimaced. Pity. I just wanted to try out my new jutsu. Don't you even think about it, Tenzo chastised him. You nearly destroyed your own lungs the last time. Yes, I have no intention of patching you back together again, if you do, Hana added. You're mean, the boy pouted, but didn't press the issue. So what exactly is the plan? A couple of minutes later Tenzo received the covert signals that everybody was on their positions and ready to begin. He stood in front of the door, one of Hana's dogs marked as belonging to one of the bandits they believed to be the leader. He signaled for the operation to commence, then opened the door. The man inside had time only to open his mouth before the Jounin was upon him. He stunned him by hitting a pressure point before the man could sound alarm. Success, he signaled to his squad. They entered the room, the girls through the door, Naruto through the window. He was chosen to guard it for his ability to remain unnoticed even on a plain wall. Nobody ever figured out how he was doing it, for him it was just instinct. They eyed the captive now lying tied on the floor. Did we really get the right one? Naruto questioned. I didn't picture him quite like that from the description. You're right, Hana admitted. I chose the wrong scent to follow, but it certainly is one of the bandits. Look, she pointed at a backpack with the logo of the mining company. He can tell us where the others are just as well as anybody else, Tenzo stated and prepared a silencing barrier. The interrogation didn't take long, the bird had started singing almost as soon as they began. They now had the numbers of the rooms the rest of the band stayed in and most importantly the location of its leader. They went to work. Haishiro's room, your dinner, sir," the boy carrying the tray announced in the polite impersonal voice of all professional servants. It reminded Haero of his humble origins and therefore always pissed him off. "I haven't ordered any," Bandit growled and scowled. And if he remembered correctly, this particular inn didn't cater to guests that way. The child clearly wasn't who he claimed to be. The only question was, what did he want? Haero grabbed his katana again. The imposter servant walked into the room ignoring his dismissal. "I was told to deliver it here," he stated matter-of-factly. "Leave. Now," the thief commanded. "But sir, the brat started setting the tray on the table. Haero unsheathed his sword menacingly. The squirt looked completely harmless, but it never hurt to be prepared. That was his credo. "Didn't you understand? I said leave." He leaned forward and twisted his face into a threatening grimace. The little rat cowered under his glare. An almost imperceptible hint of movement was the only warning he had. He instinctively jumped away. A small pouch flew through the spot his head had occupied just a moment before and exploded into a cloud of bluish smoke. His eyes darted towards the still open door. A girl was standing there, readying for another throw. Ninja, damn it. Although he held his skills in high regard, he knew he was way out of his league here. He'd have to take a hostage. He went for what he perceived as the easier target. He lunged at the boy. Naruto was momentarily startled by the bandit's speed, but instincts honed through countless training sessions kicked in. He smoothly evaded the attack. He realized he was facing common mission mishap number 2, a supposedly civilian opponent has basic shinobi training. He sent a silent thanks to his sensei for preparing him for such occasion. He dove down and punched the leg trying to kick him in the knee. The man was thrown off balance, but he quickly recovered and swung his sword at him. "Naruto!" Hana yelled from the door and rushed to help him. She needn't have bothered. Naruto was as quick as ever and swiftly slid on the floor between the swordsman's legs, avoiding the danger altogether. By that time Hana reached the highwayman and slammed into him. He was able to block her slashing claw, but the impact sent him flying backwards, right on top of Naruto. "Oomph!" cried the unlucky blonde. Nobody paid him any heed, Hana being too busy pummeling the murderer, the man trying to block her hits, mostly unsuccessfully. After what seemed like a long time they finally rolled off him and he was able to breathe and move again. He jumped to his feet and kicked the bandit's head. The bloke slumped unconscious. Hana paid it no heed, she proceeded beating the living daylight out of him. "Enough," commanded a strong voice. She punched her victim a couple more times before registering it. She looked behind and noticed the figure of her sensei. "When did he come in?" "What was that supposed to mean?" he demanded. She hesitated. What did just happen? The man had attacked Naruto and then something inside her had snapped. "He was attacking Naruto," she said lamely. "Bah," the boy in question brushed it off. "It wasn't like he could really hit me. I'm better than that." "I know, it's just that. I can't bear the thought of losing another teammate," she thought, but couldn't bring herself to say aloud. She felt immensely stupid. "It doesn't really matter now, but we'll be finishing this conversation," Tenzo promised. "Now let's see whether the racket you made alerted the others." The following day it turned out that they needn't have worried. Most of the culprits weren't in the inn anyway, most of them opting to celebrate their successful robbery by blowing away the money in bars, gambling parlors, and brothels. They had to stay up all the night up and wait for them, but they captured them all without further incidents. In the morning they handed them over to the local authorities. They weren't equipped for handling that many prisoners. Tenzo gave them the day off to rest and explore the city. The girls took the opportunity enthusiastically. They didn't need any particular reason for a shopping spree. Chances were the stores here sold a different fashion than in Konoha. Naruto stayed with Tenzo. There was something he wanted to talk to the older man about, but didn't want anyone to overhear. Tenzo, he started in a small voice. What is it, Naruto? The former ANBU was suddenly concerned. His young charge sounded uncharacteristically subdued. I have to tell you something I couldn't tell you before. About what? The Jounin wondered. A lot of things had happened during the mission and they had already talked about them. In the valley, after I fell. I saw it. It spoke to me. He didn't have to clarify. Tenzo immediately knew what he meant. He straightened up. What did it have to say? His mind came up with various theories, most of them either very worrisome or extremely far-fetched. Not much, Naruto answered. Just that I should be grateful to it for everything and that if it really wanted to, it could cause me a lot of trouble. Don't worry about it too much, his guardian tried to console him. The seal should hold it back. I'll have somebody look at you once we get back to Konoha. And for now, I can always suppress it, you know. I know, the blonde replied, but you're still afraid, the Mokuton wielder guessed. Yes, the Jinchuriki admitted. I understand, the older man said. I would be too in your place. Just don't let it bother you too much. I'll try, the boy promised. That's all I ask for, he ruffled Naruto's hair. Now, go and enjoy the city. Noon Jiraiya decided to take a break from his search. He spent a month trying to find out where the missing nin who had attacked Team Yagi came from. There wasn't much to start from, but he wasn't just some green kid new in the information business. He was Jiraiya of the Sannin, Konohagakure's spymaster. And also a super pervert, but it didn't matter now. He wasn't to be deterred by such minor drawbacks. It took him weeks, but he finally came upon a rumor of a place taking in rogue ninja. He couldn't find out anything definite, but he managed to confirm that it really existed. He just couldn't pinpoint its location or who was behind it. He just got the vague feeling that this was going to be big, probably even a new hidden village in the making. Once there used to be a dime a dozen such villages, wandering clans banding together to improve their chances of survival all the time, but with every major war their number declined, they either joined one of the pre-existing powers or ended up obliterated. There hadn't been a new village founded since the Third Great Shinobi War ended. And now there was another in the making. It put the Toad Sage on edge. It was a daring endeavor and whoever had put it into motion and managed to keep it under wraps, probably for quite some time, had to be good. Very good. There never were many ninja of such caliber. Most of them were either leaders or at least prominent members of well-established villages. Those who weren't usually had to leave their homes due to their psychopathic tendencies. Jiraiya didn't want to think of the implications of somebody like them in charge of a large ninja force. Last time it had happened a major war started. He wanted to just forget all about it. That is why after meeting his contact he went to relax at the local hot springs. There was nothing like an afternoon of research to soothe his troubled mind. He took out his pen and notepad and settled down comfortably next to a hole in the fence. Downtown Naruto felt relieved after his talk with Tenzo. He grabbed a couple of hours of sleep and then headed to the city. He rarely wandered the streets of Konoha and never on his own. It was too dangerous, not to mention unpleasant. But here he could walk without fear. Nobody glared at him in the streets, people treated him politely. It felt like a dream. Soon he became bored with simply strolling around and decided to do something. But what? There wasn't that much entertainment open to 8-year-old boys, and those that would admit him were too childish. And Naruto didn't consider himself a child anymore. No, he was now a ninja, no matter that he was probably the youngest and shortest ninja in Konoha. He briefly considered joining his two kunoichi teammates on their shopping trip, but he had heard some horror stories about girls looking for new clothes and decided against it. He stopped for lunch at a ramen stand, but was disappointed by their products. They had nothing on Ichiraku's. Or maybe he just couldn't enjoy it properly because Ayam and Tucci weren't there. He soon left and looked through several other streets. Then he came across a place that seemed perfect for spending a relaxing afternoon. He never enjoyed the hot springs in Konoha for the same reason he never spent much time downtown. But here he could spend a whole afternoon soaking in peace. Life, though, had a different plan. He hadn't been enjoying the warm water for more than half an hour when an angry yell resounded from behind the wall separating the men's and women's part. What was worse, he recognized the voice. It was Hana. His teammate was in trouble. It was everything he needed to know. He rushed to her aid. Hana wasn't having a good day. First the trouble in the inn, then the threat of her sensei forcing her to talk about painful topics, and now a pervert tried to peep on her when she decided to relax in the spa for a bit. After everything that happened during the last week, she sorely needed a day off. And now some lurking creep tried to take even that from her. He had to pay. She shouted a battle cry and started after him. The other women quickly caught on. Unfortunately, the voyeur was quick on his feet and disappeared into the traffic on the main street. She had half a mind to follow him by his scent, but she didn't want to run around the town clad only in a wet towel. The pervert would surely appreciate that. She returned to the springs. She came onto a most curious sight. Naruto suddenly realized something. He was clad only in a towel. He was in the women's part of the hot springs. He couldn't see his teammates anywhere. He was alone among many angry females who took notice of him. He was screwed. Hana could just stare in amazement. There was her shortest teammate surrounded by a bunch of women, looking extremely young and lost. Defending your friend like that? That's just too sweet, one of the ladies exclaimed. Such a brave boy, another added. Just adorable, the third one cooed. Naruto shivered. Yes, he was indeed doomed. Jiraiya landed on the roof, perfectly concealed by one of his techniques. The girls were prettiest when they were angry. The rooftop gave him a perfect view. Then he noticed something out of order. Who was there among so many ladies? Was that Naruto? Yes, there were the whisker marks. It was him. But what was he doing here? The self-proclaimed super pervert decided it didn't really matter, as long as the boy was getting lucky. He took out his trusty notepad and started scribbling. Evening. The squad have returned to their hotel, not the Blue Swan. They weren't welcome there anymore. They mutually decided not to mention the spa disaster to anyone ever again. It took nearly an hour before Naruto managed to escape the clutches of overly affectionate elderly ladies intent on coddling him like a baby. He was sure the experience would haunt his nightmares for years to come. Before they could go to sleep, Tenzo called Hana aside. So, are you ready to talk about yesterday now? He said. It wasn't a question. I guess, she sighed. It's just. When I saw him swinging his sword at Naruto, it was like I was back there again. I saw Jubai and Takeda and Yagi-sensei and I just saw red. I'm sorry, I know I botched it but I swore I wouldn't let a teammate die again. She finished her speech and looked into his eyes. I understand, he nodded gravely. Most ninja do. Losing a comrade is always painful, but you must not let it consume you. You had almost no time to grieve, which makes it feel still fresh, but you have to overcome it. You don't want to end up like a certain acquaintance of mine, who spends every spare minute staring at the memorial stone. Somebody actually does that? She raised her eyebrows curiously. Yes, Tenzo confirmed. He's been at it for years. I really don't want to end up like him, the Inuzuka shuddered. I believe you, her sensei said. And for now, trust in your team. It's commendable to risk yourself to help your comrades, but you can't do it constantly. They are both capable shinobi and they don't need you holding their hands. It's insulting to them. They can take care of themselves. If you rush to aid one, you leave the other's flank unguarded. It's something you cannot afford in battle. So just trust them to do their job. Understand? Yes, she nodded, I understand. I just don't know whether I can always abide. Nobody knows. Just do your best, he smiled reassuringly. I will, she stated solemnly. I promise. Several days later they reported their findings to the mining company. The bosses seemed ecstatic when they heard about the gold, furious when they found out that some witnesses were sitting in a prison somewhere, able to tell somebody about the new load. The demise of their employees left them only mildly perturbed, if not entirely indifferent. Tenzo had to covertly step on Naruto's foot to prevent him saying anything about that. Then there came the question of payment. Somebody had the gall to claim that since they weren't able to keep the findings of the expedition secret, they didn't deserve their money. Naruto had to be bodily restrained by his teammates. Assaulting the clients would leave them with no pay for sure. Tenzo calmly stated that their mission directives said nothing about that, and if he disagreed, maybe he could discuss it with the Hokage, and the man had to grudgingly admit that they fulfilled all stated objectives. They collected their earnings and headed for Konoha. They couldn't wait to get home. They ran through the familiar forest. The village gates should appear any time now. There. But, what was that? The team came to a halt. There have never been so much guards standing at the gates, not unless there was a war. Had one broken out? Sure, they would have heard something, wouldn't they? Ninja wars did tend to start very suddenly sometimes. Their elation suddenly gone, they approached the gates at a cautious pace. They showed their identifications and mission scroll to the Chunin on guard. What happened here? Tenzo inquired. Or is it classified? No, it's not, the man answered. Something like this cannot be kept under wraps anyway. The Uchiha clan has been massacred. What? Council chamber. The morning after it had happened, Sarutobi found himself in the council chamber again, and once again listening to the enraged shouts of the councillors. It was becoming a disturbingly common occurrence lately. We have to launch a search, the culprits can be still nearby, somebody shouted. The Hokage didn't recognize his voice in the racket. What can they do against a force that massacred a whole elite ninja clan? That was the Kurama clan head. It must have been the demon, who else? It was Satoru who said it. Who else, indeed? Impossible, Inazuka-tsum stated. He isn't even in Konoha. How do you know? Satoru demanded. He seemed just about ready to call her the demon's accomplice. He's away on a mission. His team left 4 days ago, packed for a long trip. They haven't returned yet, the Inazuka matriarch explained. And how do you know that? And since when is the demon a shinobi? Satoru demanded angrily. I know because he's on a team with my daughter. And since when? I think around 2 months ago, Tsum answered. And you agreed to it? Satoru asked incredulously. Why shouldn't I? The dog mistress shrugged. My daughter wasn't complaining, so neither was I. Why weren't we informed about the demon becoming a shinobi? One civilian councilwoman demanded, turning to the Sandame. Why was it even allowed? I have total command over Konoha's shinobi forces, as you should know, the Hokage stated calmly. I don't have to share my decisions with anybody. And why was Uzumaki Naruto allowed to become a ninja? He passed the genin test. That wasn't what she meant, Satoru snapped. The Hokage had known very well that this wasn't what Satoru meant and ignored it purposefully. That beast is dangerous. Everybody knows it. And now even more so. You must have different information than me, the professor replied. I am unaware of any incident involving Uzumaki Naruto attacking anyone. And besides, we gathered here to discuss a completely different matter, namely the massacre of the Uchiha clan. That's right, Yamanaka Inoichi said. Since we determined it couldn't possibly be the work of the Kyubi, who was it? Are there any clues? Not yet, the third answered. It wasn't like he could disclose what had really happened. Fortunately, he was very skilled in lying and obfuscating. The evidence points to only a small group of attackers. We have to wait for Uchiha Sasuke to wake and enlighten us. That might take too long, Hyuga Hayashi pointed out. I assure we are doing everything in our power to determine the culprits, the Hokage stated. Nobody could tell just how big a lie this was. When will you have them? They cannot get away with it. We have to show our strength. The room descended into chaos again. Sarutobi sighed. This was going to be a long session. A very long one. At the village gates the whole squad was stunned. The Uchiha clan, the strongest, one of the founding clans of Konoha, massacred? Obliterated? It was incomprehensible. Who did it? Hana asked. Are there any survivors? Hataru inquired at the same time. Shunsui, she thought. Her snotty, arrogant, insufferable, but undeniably skilled teammate. They have never been close, at times she even hated him and his awesome eyes he had been so proud of, but she never wished anything bad happened to him. Please let him be alive. There is one, the Chunin answered, but he's bad off. Who? Hataru couldn't wait to know, but also dreaded the answer. Please let it be Shunsui. Uchiha Sasuke, the man crushed her hopes. Not Shunsui. Not Shunsui. Her annoying haughty teammate, all around pain in the neck, but also her comrade during countless hours of training and several missions, was dead. They parted ways quite some times ago, but still she had trouble coming to terms with the fact he was truly gone. She barely noticed when Tenzo urged them to report their mission success. She just stood there silently during the debriefing, forgetting to speak when she was asked to clarify something. She was just relieved when they were finally dismissed. She somehow found her way home and locked herself in, not going out for a full day. Inazuka clan compound, I'm home, Hana announced. Hi, honey, her mother greeted. How was your mission? And have you heard what happened here yet? We succeeded and yes, I did, the girl answered. Terrible, isn't it, the clan matriarch said. It is, her daughter nodded, though Hataru seemed to be hit the worst. I'm not surprised, Sum replied. She used to be on a team with one of them. I didn't know that, the girl looked up in surprise. You seem to know little about your team, the older woman commented. I know, Hana admitted with a tiny sliver of shame. I just didn't feel like talking to them, and they weren't too open either. I couldn't stand them the first time I saw them, but I eventually got used to them. But we are now becoming a true team. That's good to hear, the clan head stated. I was getting worried for you there. At times I was worried too, the girl confessed. But that isn't what I wanted to talk to you about. What then? The clan head raised an eyebrow. Something happened during the mission, the young Kunoichi started. Were you hurt? The mother worried. Or did something happen to the Haemaru siblings? No, Hana assured her, nothing happened to us. It's about Naruto. Sum immediately went on alert. Her daughter didn't miss on it. What is it? We were scouting the mountains, and Naruto fell down a slope, the genin started her story. It was high and steep and he should have ended up scattered into 1,000 tiny pieces, but he survived. He was badly hurt and had to lie in the snow for a whole night, but he pulled through. He suffered multiple fractures and internal damage, but he was able to walk after only 2 days and another 2 and he was completely healthy. When I asked about it, they said it was something like a bloodline, but I've never heard of anything like it. And Naruto seemed skittish, like he was concealing something. And that's not all. She took a deep breath. When he was falling, I felt something. I couldn't recognize it, but it felt sinister and powerful. It disappeared just as suddenly as it appeared. I'm sure I've felt it somewhere before, but I can't remember. The older woman stayed silent for a while, carefully considering her next words. I'm afraid I can't give you an explanation. The only one who can speak about it is Naruto. But he isn't willing to do so, Hana replied. And it isn't the only strange thing about him. He possesses a nearly endless well of energy. It took a full day of running at top speed to make him tired. And there is the matter of the way most of the villagers look at him. Like he committed something terrible. I've heard some rumors, but they sound far-fetched. He's just a child, he couldn't have possibly done some of those things. Sure, he can be annoying, but no more than Kiba. Nothing about it makes any sense. She finished her tirade with a questioning look at the other woman. I understand that you're confused, but I cannot give you any explanation. Her mother shook her head. You'll have to ask him or find an answer yourself. But be prepared for an answer you won't like. What do you mean? The girl inquired with surprise. I can't tell you, Sum replied. I understand, Hana said. She felt more confused and intrigued than ever. Hokage's office, everything appears to be in order, the professor concluded his examination. It took a long time, but he was being exceptionally thorough. It just wouldn't do to rush something like this. The seal is working as it is supposed to. Thank you, Hokage-sama, Tenzo said. So everything is okay? The Jinchuriki half-asked, fastening his shirt. Yes, Naruto, everything is all right, the old village leader smiled reassuringly. You may go now. Tenzo, stay. I have to speak to you about something. Sure. Bye, Naruto called, running through the door. He slammed it behind him and then he was gone. The former ANBU stood calmly and waited for his superior to begin. As you know, Sarutobi started, the village has recently suffered a huge blow both to our strength and our reputation, but we cannot afford to appear weak. We should show the prowess of our youngest generation. The Chunin exams start in Kusa in a little over a month. Is your team capable of competing? They don't have to succeed, just put on a good show. Hokage-sama, I'm afraid I cannot allow them to enter now, the Jounin-sensei answered sadly. If you have read the last mission report, you would know that they are still unready, all of them prone to acting rash. Naruto is just too young, inexperienced and hot-headed. Hana is still hurting from the loss of her old team and Hataru just suffered a blow and I don't know how she would deal. If I entered them now, chances are they would get slaughtered. I believe that they would be eligible for the next term, but not just now. I understand, the elderly man nodded. In half a year then. Memorial Stone. Hataru didn't visit the Memorial Stone often, but she could immediately see the difference. So many names had been added since she last saw it. The Memorial Stone was meant for shinobi killed in the line of duty, but defending themselves from an unknown attacker was considered the line of duty. So the names of all Uchiha shinobi adorned the stone now. She knelt down next to the memorial and began reading. There were so many she didn't know and others she knew only in passing. She couldn't even assign the names to most of the faces. It took her a while to find her teammate's name near the bottom. She traced her fingers along the symbols. Uchiha Shunsui. He had been a talented shinobi, just like most of his clansmen, and though he wasn't exceptional, he had a bright career before him. And now he was just another name on the stone. He won't do any more missions, won't make Jounin, won't sneer at her again. Well, there was a reason she hadn't liked him when he had been still alive. But no matter his faults, he didn't deserve this. She stood there for a while, she couldn't tell how long, and just stared at the name. Then a rustle of leaves brought her out of her reverie. She saw a man in the standard shinobi uniform land near the stone and kneel down next to her. Well, there had to be more people that had friends in the Uchiha clan. In fact, it was a bit odd that there weren't more mourners. Maybe they were too busy looking for the culprits. Or maybe they weren't dwelling on the dead and dealt with the living instead. And maybe she should be doing the same. She had a new team now. She might not like it too much, but it was her life now. She turned around and left. The next day when the team disbanded after their training in the evening, Hana joined Hataru on her way home. The purple-haired kunoichi wanted just to be left alone and pointedly ignored her companion, but the brunette wasn't deterred so easily. "I heard one of them was your former teammate," she started. Hataru just nodded. She didn't want anybody poking their nose in it and hoped the Inuzuka would get the hint. But she wasn't so lucky. "I know it hurts, but don't let the pain get to you." "And just what do you know?" the sword wielder snapped. "I lost my old team too," the Inuzuka explained. "It happened on a mission. I was scouting ahead and they were attacked from behind. I spent a long time just wondering if I could help them had I been with them. I'm still not over it, but I'm trying." "And you're telling me this just why?" Hataru barely looked at her. She really didn't want to talk about it, but the dog mistress was persistent. "So you can avoid it. Believe me, wavering in pain and guilt will bring you only trouble. I want to help you. That's what teammates are for, isn't it?" "I guess it is." They haven't really solved anything, but both girls felt like they would eventually. Later the team resumed their training routine. They went back to D-ranks, spars and elemental training. Naruto got it down first. Hana and Hataru were still struggling. The boy then proceeded to perfect his original jutsu. Tenzo wasn't happy about it, but Naruto decided to use shadow clones in training to avoid hurting himself. It took a long time before he stopped popping them. The mock missions stepped up in difficulty. They took an extra focus on the possible negative results of reckless behavior, as well as facing unknown opponents. Tenzo was frantically trying to prepare them for the next Chunin exams, scheduled to take place in Suna. They completed another C-rank mission, a simple escort of a caravan to the capital and back again. Nothing out of ordinary happened there. Naruto was bored, the girls were thankful. Then came the time for another interesting mission assignment. "Mission room, this will probably be harder than what you have done so far," the Hokage started. Tenzo stiffened. In his experience it never bode well. There have been reports of children gone missing near the northern border. It has been going on for quite some time. The local authorities had no luck investigating. They eventually asked for our assistance. "If I may inquire," the sensei dared, "why us? Shouldn't a more experienced team be deployed?" "It would usually be the case, but you have an important asset," Sarutobi explained. "You have the youngest shinobi currently in Konoha." "Figures." Naruto paled a little. "I'm bait," he realized. It made him uncomfortable, but also gave him a sense of responsibility. He hadn't really done anything on the last mission, not that anything happened there, and the first one, let's not even go there. He still felt embarrassed every time he remembered it. But this was going to be his show. Despite his initial fear, he was looking forward to this. On the road they left the Leaf Village at dawn. For some reason or other that was traditionally considered to be the best time to start a mission. They covered the ground quickly. They expected to arrive at their destination sometime the day after tomorrow. "How are we going to go about this?" Naruto asked. "We might just try to follow the tracks, but we might have trouble finding them. It's been days since the last kid disappeared and we don't know, when and where will it happen again." "Are we going to set up bait?" "I wouldn't rush it," Tenzo decided. "We start with investigating the crime scenes. We might get lucky and find a clue. Using bait is only a last resort." "Okay," Naruto nodded, half relieved, half dejected. "But in case we have to try it anyway, How long do you think you can hold your transformation? The Jounin wanted to know. I've never thought about it, the boy scratched his head. Long, I guess several days, then I'll have to reapply. Good enough, Tenzo nodded. Near the border they arrived at the small town of Yugo. It was a rather unimportant stop on the trading route between Fire Country and Rice Field Country. Few merchants came through here, most of them preferring the main road to the Lightning Country further southeast. Only after harvest carts loaded with rice traveled on the dirt road. The rest of the year it had barely any visitors. The squad entered the settlement early in the afternoon. The sun shined brightly on the hot summer day, forcing most citizens to spend the time inside, protected from the oppressive heat. Only a couple of people noticed their arrival, but their curious glances promised that whole Yugo would learn about it shortly. Tenzo didn't like announcing their presence like that, but he had to speak with the local official and he doubted the man could keep a secret. They knocked on his door and waited for his response. Then they knocked again. When nothing happened, they just opened the door and found the man taking his afternoon nap on a sofa. Tenzo sighed and shook him awake. It took some effort, but eventually the officer opened bleary eyes. When he saw strangers in his office, he startled. They showed him their mission scroll and explained why they were there. Then they asked for his assistance. First they went through the missing person reports. They haven't learned much more than they already knew. It turned out that most of the victims were orphan street children who nobody missed. Their disappearances had been barely noticed. Then the son of a prominent craftsman disappeared. The consensus was that he had ran away. The boy held dreams of becoming a ninja and often spoke about going to Konoha. Their mission scroll stated he never arrived, but a lot of things could have happened to him on the road. It wouldn't be suspicious in itself, but several others followed over time. All of them had some delusion of grandeur and decided to follow it. Neither of them were seen or heard from again. As isolated incidents they could be easily written off, but their frequency was indeed worrisome. Where do we start? Hataru mused. The trails are cold and the parents already told all they knew to the local authorities. We'll speak to them anyway, Tenzo decided. It sounds like there's someone recruiting the kids. They might have noticed something. Recruiting them? Naruto blinked. Why do you think so? Hataru questioned. Most of them either wanted more from life or had low living standards, the Jounin explained. If somebody promised them better life, they'd jump at the opportunity. Understood? 3 nods answered him. Then let's go question the parents. It turned out that the parents didn't know anything more. The team spent the rest of the afternoon listening to distraught mothers and fathers pleading for them to return their children, but they haven't gathered any new information. They settled in the only decent inn in Yugo to discuss their options. There weren't many of them. They could still try posing as civilians, but that might take ages. We have to talk to somebody who knew the missing children, Naruto stated. And just what had we been doing the whole afternoon, you genius? Hana snapped. Talking to their parents, the blonde replied. Then what else do you want? The Inuzuka shot him a look usually reserved for slow children. Speak to their friends, the boy explained. They might know something their parents don't. Also, what about the street kids? Some of their peers might have an idea. If there really is someone recruiting, he must have spoken to more children than only the missing ones. Also, is there an orphanage in the town? Somebody couldn't miss that out. That makes sense, Hataru admitted, but it still might not be enough. How can we make sure they would talk to us? There's an old trick to it, their sensei joined the conversation. Make them feel like you understand. So how do we do it? The following day the orphanage reminded Naruto of old times, before he met Tenzo. He couldn't help but compare the two institutions. This one was smaller and more run down than the one in Konoha, but the children running around the garden and observing the visitors seemed the same. Even the elderly matron could be sister of the one he used to know. The squad commander went to speak with the proprietor, leaving his 3 students standing outside the door. The foxy boy tried to get in with him, but the Jounin sensei stopped him. "Stay here," he ordered, "and don't botch it like usual, if it's not too complicated order for you to follow." Then he closed the door, leaving the dejected genin standing in the hallway. "Why do we have to stay here?" Naruto complained. "Shut up, Tiny," Hana chided. "It's boring," the youngest of the 3 genin continued. "Why can't we do real ninja work?" We are following orders, so quit your whining, it's annoying," the Inuzuka chastised. "You're mean," the little blonde pouted. "Why are you always so mean to me?" "Because you get on my nerves," she replied with a glare. "Why does everyone say that?" The yellow-haired youth looked downtrodden and annoyed. "Do I really have to answer this?" the dog mistress growled. "Just shut up and get lost, you twit." Her dogs bared their teeth. "Always the same," the Jinchuriki grumbled, but got up and wandered around the courtyard. He kicked a couple of stones angrily. "I'm a ninja, just like them. Why can't they treat me like one? Do you hear?" Hana heard and threw a stone. Naruto barely dodged. "Bitch," he shouted before running around the corner. There he sat down, hugging his knees. He hid his face and started sobbing. Soon a child approached him. "Are you sad?" the newcomer asked. "What gave it away?" the shinobi replied sarcastically. He wiped his eyes and looked at the speaker. It was a boy, probably a year or 2 younger than him. He had a round face framed by shoulder-length dark hair and big eyes. "You were crying," the younger orphan stated. "I wasn't." Naruto protested. The stranger raised an eyebrow. "Maybe a little," the blonde admitted grudgingly. "They are nasty to you, aren't they?" he stated. "I know what is it like." Naruto said nothing, just watched him questioningly. "What's your name?" "I'm Dato," the stranger introduced himself. "I'm Naruto," the Konoha genin replied. "Can we be friends, if just for a while?" the dark-eyed child offered. "I'd like that," the Uzumaki agreed. "That's great," the other boy smiled. "It's been lonely here lately." "Why?" the young ninja inquired. "My best friend left," Dato explained. "I'm sorry," Naruto apologized. "Don't be," Dato replied. "He has it better now." "How do you know?" The young demon vessel wondered. "Somebody took him in," the dark-haired orphan answered. "It was a really good one. He said Taira had real potential." "He got lucky then," Naruto said sadly looking to the ground. "And you are not?" The local boy raised an eyebrow. "You are a ninja after all." "Yeah, I am." The blonde sounded defeated. "Aren't you lucky to be getting stronger?" Dato scrunched his brow in confusion. "I would be," the Konoha shinobi grimaced. "What do you mean?" the Yugo native looked at him questioningly. "Well, you saw my team," Naruto replied. "Yes," he nodded understandingly. "But surely they aren't always that bad?" "Sometimes they're worse," the youth replied with a sigh. "Sensei thinks I'm just some snotty idiot who passed the genin test by accident." "But at least you have someone," Dato said sympathetically. "I wish I had." Naruto never looked so dejected and lonesome before. At the moment Tenzo left the matron's office. "Team, we're going," he ordered. Where did Naruto wander off again? Once he'll get lost and I'll be in trouble for it. "You heard him," the genin in question said. "I'd better be going." "Can you come back?" the local inquired hopefully. "I'll try," the blonde promised before joining his team. "Here you are. Just try not to get lost again," Tenzo chastised. The squad headed out. The I've gathered that a lot of kids had been adopted lately, Tenzo informed his underlings. What about you? I might have a clue, Naruto smiled. The plan seems to be working. The next day Naruto found time to visit Dato again. The team split up to look after clues individually. While the others were searching the town, the blonde headed straight to the orphanage. It didn't take him long to locate the dark-haired boy. They relaxed together, playing silly children games, chit-chatting about this and that. Eventually Dato asked what Naruto's squad was doing there. That's a secret, the blonde replied, trying to put on an air of importance. Really? The other boy inquired. Really, the genin confirmed, but he looked like he actually yearned to tell. Come on, the younger child prodded. I won't tell anyone. I don't know. Naruto looked hesitant. I can keep a secret, I promise. Eagerness shone in Dato's dark eyes. I still don't know. The blonde was now refusing just for show. Don't be so uptight, the local orphan didn't relent. We are friends, aren't we? I guess so, the young shinobi admitted. Okay, I'll tell you. But you must never ever tell anyone. It's a great secret, understand? I understand, the wide-eyed child nodded. I won't tell a word, I swear. Well, then listen. Naruto leaned closer conspiratorially. We came here to investigate a big case. A big case? Dato looked at him with admiration. Yes, the blonde nodded dramatically, relishing in his importance. Lots and lots of disappearances. People are getting panicked here. Really? I haven't noticed anything, Dato replied skeptically. That's because you're out of the loop, Naruto explained. No, I don't mean that, the younger lad clarified. I haven't noticed anyone panicking. Really? Naruto asked bewildered. But we heard it differently. Then you must have heard it wrong, Dato said with absolute assurance. And nobody disappeared as well. What? The blue-eyed boy asked with an expression of total non-comprehension. They haven't disappeared, the local child explained. They left for a better life, but adults wouldn't understand. You know something about it, the Konoha genin inquired eagerly. If I can tell it to sensei, then he'll have to admit I'm good. Would he really? The younger boy doubted. Well. Of course, Naruto said with a false smile. You don't really believe that, Dato stated. Well, you're right, the blonde deflated. He'll always have me for an incompetent fool, no matter what I do. You wish for a better one, the dark-haired youth said sympathetically. Yes, the young ninja admitted. Maybe I could help, Dato offered. You? Naruto looked doubtful. Don't get offended, but what can you possibly do? Do you remember my friend Taira? I told you about him yesterday. Naruto nodded. He wants to be a ninja too. He found somebody who was looking for talents. I'm sure he would help you. Too. Really? But, I don't know, the leaf ninja was unconvinced. I can't just go and leave. That's treason. Like you owe them anything, Dato scoffed. Don't they constantly put you down? Well, yes, but they're still my comrades, Naruto explained. I cannot just abandon them. Don't they think they can do better without you anyway? Dato pointed out. They do, but still. You know what, Dato said. There is a man living not too far from here. He's the contact I have with Taira. Let's go visit him and then you can decide. Okay. Outskirts of Yugo, Dato had led him to an unassuming little house near the edge of the woods. It was situated in the middle of a wildly growing garden, half hidden from view by fruit trees. Here it is, the local child announced. He opened the garden door and entered, Naruto followed him. The dark-haired boy knocked on the door. Enter, a voice sounded from inside. They came in. The hall was just as unremarkable as the exterior. A plain middle-aged man came to greet them. "Hello, Dato," he welcomed them. "Who is your friend?" "This is Naruto," the younger boy introduced him proudly. "He wants to ask about your offer." "What?" the man freaked out. "You brought one of them here? Are you insane?" "But Naruto." Dato started his explanation. "Was having you on, you incompetent idiot," the owner of the house interrupted. "And you lead them straight to us." The child looked terrified. "Then we simply kill them all," a new voice stated. Naruto whirled around and froze. The young man who had just appeared moved like a skilled ninja. It didn't look good for him. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Guys, make sure to help the author by visiting the link in the description. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.